Hey, what's going on, guys? It's Kevin Zwicker from Fast Count, and this is your AEW post show for 2024. Going into this show, there was a lot of hype, especially surrounding the main event between Bryan Danielson and Jon Moxley, which we will be getting into. Which we will be getting into much later on. We're going to start with the post show, the pre-show. And there wasn't a lot of eventful things that happened on the pre-show, to be honest. But one thing that was extremely important to me on a sentimental level, and something that I have been calling for and hoping for a while, we got the return to wrestling from the great Rico. If you guys don't know who Rico was the manager of the legendary tag team of Chuck and Billy Gunn and Chuck Palumbo. Chuck Palumbo appearing in AEW has been something that I've been wanting for a really long time. And Billy Gunn has been asked about it specifically in a lot of different interviews. And he's just talking about how Chuck is a very busy guy and how timing and all of that really haven't been able to link up. So that is the one part of this trinity that we are missing. We are missing the great Chuck Palumbo. And hopefully one day we can get the holy trinity of Chuck Palumbo, Billy Gunn, and Rico on our screens in AEW. But we are going to hop into the main card tonight. And the main card kicked off with Jay White versus Hangman Adam Page. Now, if you watched my prediction show, this was a match that I thought could go either way. And the reason why I thought it could go either way, because both of these guys seemingly needed this win. And why I mean that is Hangman is coming off of this big victory against Swerve Strickland in the cage match at All Out. And Jay White has just came back from his injury. And it's one of those scenarios where you don't want a guy to come off of an injury and automatically take an L. And this was a very back and forth match. This match started off extremely hot. It started off from the in-ring apron, the outside apron, the ramp. And one of these things that goes on between these two guys is you see it immediately that you're getting a lot of callbacks from previous months. If you remember the show earlier in the year, we saw that Hangman Page was the guy who took out Jay White. And you see that Jay White calls back to that. He reminds the audience that. So people that haven't been keeping up with the show lately, they know and they're into the fact that these guys have a conflict. And the reason why they have a conflict is because Hangman took him out. Now, this was a match that was very back and forth. In the beginning of the match, we saw Hangman be the person who was really taking control of the match early. And with Hangman taking control of the match early, we see a lot of aggression and anger. And a lot of times we get told that there's a lack of storytelling when it comes to certain feuds. And one of the arguments that I've always made when it came to storytelling is there's multiple ways to skin a cat. I've always made this argument that when people watch wrestling, and whether it's TNA or AEW or the Indies or anything else like that, if they're not telling the story the exact same way or hitting the same beats or doing things the exact same way that WWE is doing, there's a big portion of the audience that views what they're doing as doing it wrong. When I've always made the argument that there's different ways to skin a cat. And AEW has always leaned on the fact that they tell their stories with the in-ring action. And that's what they were doing with this match. You saw a lot of points that with different maneuvers in different spots in the ring, you saw that Jay White was taking his aggression out on Hangman for being the guy who sidelined him for so long. There was a spot in the match where Hangman bangs his knee against the apron. And that comes to be his demise in the match later on. The ending of this match was very satisfying. And the way it sets up is it sets up a possible rematch between the two, which I'm all for because these are two guys who are on the top of their game and two of the best wrestlers in the business at the moment. And we see Hangman trying to go for his buckshot lariat. He's not able to really hit it because of his lingering knee after that spot I just mentioned. And you see Jay White take advantage of that and hit his finisher. And we get the 1-2-3 count. And Jay White takes the W. I was surprised. I honestly thought that we were going to see Hangman win this match. But like I said, the way that the match finished up, you're going to possibly and more than likely than possibly get a rematch between these two. And I'm all for that. If you really want me to be honest with you guys, I would be down for a 7-match series between the two, similar to what WWE has with Andrade and Melo. Just two hoopers hooping. I'd be really down for that. And like I said, we're possibly more than likely going to see a rematch between these two, and more than likely we're going to see the story of that kicking off this week of Dynamite. I'm sorry, guys. It's been a long night. I need to drink a little bit of something, man. So the second match we're going to get into is the Women's Championship match between Mariah May and Willow Nightingale. These are the two Owen Cup women's winners of the past 2 years. They mentioned that throughout the broadcast, which I thought was a good touch. It reminds the audience that these are two women who have been very accomplished so far in their short times in AEW. Ever since Mariah May has won that championship at All In against Toni Storm, it's kind of felt like this title reign has been a little bit lukewarm. And the reason why I say it's because it's a little bit lukewarm is she already defeated her biggest adversary. So it kind of feels like we're just looking for that next challenger to where she could really sink her teeth in and have an interesting feud with. And we just haven't been able to find that individual right now. We seen Mariah May and Willow Nightingale go out, and the crowd for this match was a little bit quiet at first, just based off of the fact of how hot the first match was. So they were a little bit tired out, but throughout the match, as it got longer, you saw the crowd build up a little bit more. And you see certain points in the match where Willow Nightingale is overpowering Mariah May, obviously because of the side difference that they have between each other. But this is a match that if I had to sit there and go up and down the card, it was probably one of the more weaker matches of the card, simply just off the fact that we had big time matches sprinkled out throughout this card. So you see this match going back and forth. You see Mariah May have the upper hand in multiple different spots. Then you see Willow Nightingale always somehow regaining the momentum. But there comes a spot where Willow Nightingale is dropped on the ring apron, and it really looked like it hurt. And the reason why it looked like it hurt is just the way that she landed her back. You know, these people, especially in AEW, they take a lot of risks. And we're going to talk about later on throughout the card, because there's a lot more violence when this comes with. Surprisingly, lack of blood, which is strange for an AEW pay-per-view. But the abuse that these people take their bodies through simply just to entertain us is insane. And we really should appreciate them a lot more, because there's no way any normal, sane human being would be able to take the amount of pain that these individuals take on their body and be able to walk for the next week. Yet they take the pain, and 2-3 days later, they're on TV giving us another match. But to end this match, we see Mariah May hit Mayday on Willow Nightingale to retain the championship. And we really don't have any clear opponents set up for Mariah May after this. And the reason why is, like I said earlier, it's kind of a situation where we're looking for that next big fish for her to go against. The other big fish in the women's division is, as we know, Mercedes Moné, but she is a double champion at the moment, so there really isn't any clear path for them to hook up in the ring. So at this point, I really don't know, what direction that we go with Mariah May. Possibly Thunder Rosa, possibly Deonna Purrazzo. There's a lot of it's kind of slim pickings, man. So we get into the third match. In the third match, we have Jack Perry versus Shibata. Now, Jack Perry is somebody who has grown on me within the last couple of months. Ever since his return to AEW from Excursion in Japan, where he was labeled the scapegoat, he was the guy that everybody blamed for getting CM Punk out of AEW. He is somebody who has taken the wrath and the ire from a lot of people in the IWC. I personally have enjoyed what he's been doing, simply just based off the fact that with the Jungle Boy character, there was really no evolution past Jungle Boy, unless you were going to sit there and call him Jungle Man. And even then, I don't see a guy with that character really being able to make a big impact. So I have been a fan of the scapegoat. He goes up against Shibata, who is as we all know, a Japanese legend. I've really been entertained by the fact that Shibata does the talk to text thing. I think that is really funny. I think that the guy is amazing. As we all know, like we said, he is a legend. This is a match that went very back and forth. Shibata was taking a lot of chops to the chest voluntarily from Jack Perry. He was begging Jack to hit him in the chest. Jack would hit him over and over and over and over again. This is a typical strong style Japanese match that these two guys had. And you could tell that the story throughout the match was this is this guy who's a grizzled veteran. Jack Perry, even though he has been around for a little bit, he's still a guy who's wet behind his ears compared to a legend like Shibata. We see them go outside throughout the match. We see Shibata taking a beating in different stages, but we also see Shibata giving out a beating by exchanging chops with Jack Perry, chopping him down like a tree, giving him that work. And this was a match that really was underrated throughout the card simply off of the fact that I like the fact that Jack Perry matched energies with Shibata. And as we all know, these Japanese guys, they hit hard, man. We've heard all these different stories. We've seen Japanese legends like Inoki and guys in recent generations like Okada and Nakamura really bring this strong style and really hit hard. So I know these guys chop hard as hell. So for Jack to be able to exchange those type of chops with a guy like Shibata is pretty impressive. We see Shibata link Jack Perry up in this chokehold. We see Jack Perry pass out, but the way that he passed out was he was on top of Shibata. So Shibata had his shoulders down. It was 1, 2, 3. Jack retained. And we got one of these little screwy finishes. Now, what was more important about this match was the way that it ended. We see Shibata, kind of being confused as to why, we got that result where he was losing. He was talking to the ref, and Jack Perry hits him in the back of the head with the title. It looks like he's going to give him another beatdown, but then we hear Daniel Garcia's music, and Daniel Garcia makes the save, but that's not all we got. We see Daniel Garcia make the save. He's recently announced that he's re-signed with AEW, so he is going to be around for a little while. But after he makes the save, we hear the music from none other than MJF. Now, as we know, as I've covered on this channel, MJF has a prominent role in Happy Gilmore 2. So he was gone for the last previous months filming that movie. And if you guys want me to be honest, man, I'm very cautiously optimistic about that movie. I know this doesn't really have a lot to do with wrestling, but it's just on my mind. After the previous 2 sequels of comedy classics that have had sequels that have taken place decades after, Dumb and Dumber 2 and Coming to America 2, who have been big time disappointments for me to be able to get hyped for Happy Gilmore 2, who I think is one of the greatest comedy movies of all time. It's going to take a lot because I've just been burned twice, man. So, but I'm excited that MJF is in that movie. We also have Bad Bunny in that movie as well, who there's another connection to wrestling. So I'm going to be checking it out no matter what. Whether I hear reviews that it sucks or reviews that it's phenomenal, I'm going to be checking it out. But we see MJF make the save. And we see Jack Perry lay out Daniel Garcia, making it easy for MJF. And MJF, he sits there and he's taking his suit jacket off. He reveals that he got back his Dynamite Diamond ring from Pawn. Because if you remember, MJF legitimately lost the ring. But in storyline, they've been saying that Daniel Garcia stole it and he pawned it off in Buffalo. He's talking about how Daniel Garcia had his own little bidding war. As we all know, that was MJF's big thing prior to him re-signing with the bidding war of 2024. We see him talk about how Daniel Garcia laid him out at All Out, and now he's back to get his revenge. He's posing like he's about to hit Garcia with the Dynamite Diamond ring, but we hear the music of none other than Adam Cole, baby. And it was cool to see him run off on MJF and pick up on the fact that when he got injured, we really didn't get to see that whole devil storyline really work out because the 2 people who were involved in it got injured. So that storyline was pretty DOA from the beginning, just based off of the fact that the two main characters are gone. Like, imagine them making a Batman movie without Batman or the Joker. Like, it's just Gotham. You know, I know they have a TV show about that, which I never really was into. But imagine that, right? So, but the thing about it that really is kind of strange to me is, the last time we saw MJF and Adam Cole in the ring, we saw MJF return as a babyface. Adam Cole was still a heel. And we saw MJF kick Adam Cole in the nuts, which was justified in storyline and logically because Adam Cole was the one who turned his back on MJF. And now we have MJF in this heel role, and we have Adam Cole in this babyface role, kind of making the save, but it doesn't really add up. Like, oh man, I'm going to get back at you for you turning on me, for me turning on you. It really didn't make any logical sense to me. Maybe I'm just a slow individual, but we saw the return of Adam Cole, and I'm glad that we're finally going to be able to see these two guys reunite their feud the right way, with them two both being healthy. Next, we're going to get into the triple threat between Will Ospreay, Ricochet, and Takeshita. Now, this was the match that I was looking forward to the most on the card. And the reason why is because these guys are three of the top athletes in the whole company. A lot of people going into this match were comparing it, saying this match is going to be their version of the TNA triple threat between Bryan Daniels, AJ Styles. Did I say Bryan Daniels? And Samoa Joe. Christopher Daniels, AJ Styles, and Samoa Joe. And there were spots in this match where we saw that. Obviously, we're going to get the badass, cool, athletic maneuvers between Will Ospreay and Ricochet. If you're into those matches that they've had before, you're going to be into those matches now. And if you aren't into those matches that they have between each other, I can't really see any reason why you would like this match either. It was a classic Will Ospreay Ricochet match thrown in with Takeshita. And they used Takeshita really perfectly in this match to me. And the reason why they used it perfectly is because you see all these high-flying maneuvers, and you see a lot of different points in the match where we see a lot of no-selling between we see a lot of no-selling between Will Ospreay and Ricochet, where they're doing all these cool flips, they're doing all these maneuvers, they're doing all these like devastating maneuvers where these guys are getting dropped on their head or dropped on their back, yet 2 seconds later, they're standing up like nothing happened. But we see this really big athletic guy busting up the silence between these guys. Pause. And it worked perfectly in the way that you have this guy who's able to throw off the rhythm between them and show off the fact that you don't need to do flippy things or do all these dangerous stunts to be an entertaining pro wrestler. And Takeshita is a guy who, ever since he's really graced our TV screens in AEW, you've had a lot of top talent. Guys like Bryan Danielson, guys like the Mox, other different guys on the roster talk about how great he is. And there's been spurts where they have really shown off the greatness that he is. But then there's been other times where he's been a background player and not really been involved in anything significant. And this was one of the moments where he was able to shine. Now we get towards the end of the match. And the end of the match, we see Don Callis get elbowed, interfering in the match. And we see Don Callis pull the ref's leg when Takeshita was about to lose. And we see him trying to pull out the screwdriver and hit Will Ospreay with the screwdriver, but it gets caught. And Will Ospreay is getting Don Callis in the Tiger Driver, but we see a guy in a hoodie hit Will Ospreay with the screwdriver. And it was obvious who it was, even before he even revealed himself. The announcer saying, it's Kyle Fletcher, which I'm glad that they do sometimes, because it's just like, when you see the guy's face or the guy's hair or, a facial feature, why even sit there and pretend like you don't know who the guy is when it's extremely obvious to the TV audience? But we see Kyle Fletcher hit Will Ospreay in the head with the screwdriver. And Will Ospreay is looking confused as what's going on? What's going on? This is my boy. Why would he do something like that? And we see Takeshita hit him with a running knee. And 1, 2, 3. Takeshita is our new international champion. This is what I'm talking about, man. I am ecstatic that they were able to give this guy his moment. He's more than willing and more than deserving to have earned this type of achievement in AEW. Then after the match where Takeshita wins the ring, we see Kyle Fletcher hit Will Ospreay with the Tiger Driver, setting up a feud between these two best friends. And I love Kyle Fletcher. Kyle Fletcher is a guy who has really been earning his stripes lately in AEW. He's been showing off his incredible abilities on Dynamite. He's been showing off his matches in Collision. So he's a guy who's really been working his way up. He's only 25 years old too, which is insane. I just imagine when you see guys like that, like just think about how good they're going to be when they're 30, 32, 33. The guy has not even entered prime yet, and he's doing the things that he's doing. So I'm really excited for that match. I don't know what's going to happen when Mark Davis is 100% cleared, man. Because I feel like since he's been gone, Kyle Fletcher has really shown off that he is a great singles wrestler. And they were a great tag team, man. But it's just like, once you've shown that you could do it on your own, like getting sticked in a tag team, even though it was a really good tag team, kind of feels like a demotion. So I don't know what they're going to do with that. I feel like he's been gone and been hearing rumors that he's going to be cleared soon. So it's like eventually I feel like he's going to somehow interfere in the storyline or factor in somehow. But we're just not going to be so sure until I guess it happens, man. But we got this feud set up. I was really hoping that we were going to get Okada versus Takeshita soon, but it doesn't look like we're going to be getting that. So we have Takeshita with the International Championship, and I'm glad to see that happen to him, and I'm excited to see what they're going to do with him winning the championship. Next is the segment where we see Swerve give us an update. Swerve is in his hometown of Tacoma. We have Prince Nana hawking his coffee, and we have him announce that Swerve Strickland is here. We see Swerve Strickland walk out to the ring. We have these big pyro effects that he didn't have before. And that's what you get when you sign a big money deal at AEW. You get extremely loud and obnoxious pyro, which is deserving for a guy like Swerve, who in my opinion is the cornerstone of AEW. So we see him come to the ring. He gives us a medical update on him. He talks about how his neck is still kind of stiff. He talks about how he gets tinglings in his arm, tingling in his finger. So all these things that he was talking about, how Bryan Danielson is this brutal guy. He's talking about how it's kind of karma because all these things that he was making fun of Danielson for having, now he kind of has. But he announced that he is medically cleared. He's about to give us more of an update, but he gets interrupted by MVP and Shelton Benjamin. MVP is talking about how Swerve is ignoring his emails, his calls, his DMs, how he's not getting back to him. And he wants to know, man. He wants to do business with Swerve. And they talk about how far they go back. Me, as a person who's not too into the Seattle, Washington area indie scene, they talk about how they had a match in Defy. Swerve brings up the fact that he beat MVP in Defy. And he was talking about how he's been watching Dynamite lately. And all these points that MVP brings up are valid. In the past couple of months, with Prince Nana, he's lost his AEW championship. He's lost his house. He lost the steel cage match against Hangman. So he's talking about basically how MVP is right. Everything that Nana has really been involved when it comes to Swerve, everything is kind of turned to shit, the past couple of months. And he's talking about potentially linking up with MVP, talking about how, man, me teaming up with you and Shelton Benjamin, man, we might be unstoppable. He gives Shelton Benjamin his props. And for a guy my age, the two, especially when it comes to African-American wrestlers, man, the gold standard to me has been Booker T and Shelton Benjamin. These were guys who really are underrated. I know Booker T's in the Hall of Fame and he's a 5-time champion, but he's a guy who, even maybe other than his King Booker reign, man, he really doesn't get the proper due that I think that the guy deserves. He's really underrated for how great he is, and Shelton Benjamin is as well. And we see Swerve bring that up, how like his 12-year-old self, if he would have told that little boy that he would be standing in the middle of the ring with Shelton Benjamin, he wouldn't be able to handle himself. And I think that was genuine, right? So he's talking about how MVP is right. And he's talking about how Nana has really been screwing everything up. But then he brings up the fact that he wouldn't have even had those things if it wasn't for Prince Nana in the first place. And he told MVP that Prince Nana isn't only his manager, he is his family. And we do not turn our back on family. So he told MVP to take that offer and shove it up his ass. That upset Shelton Benjamin. Shelton Benjamin gets face to face with Swerve, and he tells him, this was not an offer. This was not an ask. This was a demand. You are either with us or against us. And we see a little shoving match, and we see security get in between these two. This was the moment where I thought we were going to get the return of Bobby Lashley, or the debut of Bobby Lashley to AEW. Man, if I was a betting man, I would have put my money on that this was the moment that we were going to get Lashley in AEW. We did not get that moment, and it kind of confuses me now because it's like, if not, then when? They show MVP on the ramp pointing to his watch, saying that it's time, telling Shelton Benjamin that, hey, we don't, it's not our time right now. It's going to be time for the plan to be revealed. So I'm assuming that at some point very soon we are going to get the debut of Lashley. But I thought this was the perfect moment. I guess I was wrong. Only time will tell. Next, we're going to move into the match between Hologram and the Beast Mortos. Now, when I watched this match, the first thing that popped into my mind, it wasn't how great of an athlete these two guys are, which they are. It wasn't the momentum that Hologram has going into this match. The first thing that really popped into my mind was the fact that AEW doesn't have replica masks for Mortos or Hologram already is a shame. I feel like they're missing out on a butt ton of money right there when it comes to matches, man. Hologram, I'm not going to compare him to Rey Mysterio, but he could be AEW's version of Rey Mysterio. This match was the best 2 out of 3 falls. We've seen Hologram really make his mark on Collision. This past week, he had his debut in AEW, and this is his first AEW pay-per-view match, and it went as well as it possibly could. Hologram is a guy who Tony Khan has stated in interviews that that's been a character that he has been developing for the past 2 years. And it's somebody that he's really been investing a lot of mental energy and a lot of mental time in developing this character. So we get to see him showcased on pay-per-view for the first time. And the things that we got to see Mortos do. Mortos is a big man. And we were able to see this guy do many different flips and maneuvers. We saw him do a screwdriver outside of the ring, which was insane. You hear commentators, especially Tony Schiavone, really emphasized the fact that this is a guy who shouldn't have that much body control. And the fact that he's able to do the different maneuvers that he was able to do was insane. We see Hologram get the first fall, and we all know how typical things go when it comes to 2 out of 3 falls. We see Mortos get the second fall, and we see Hologram pick up the third and final fall with this twisted powerbomb maneuver for the 1-2-3 count. It was a big win for Hologram. Hologram, outside of this little mini feud with Mortos, hasn't been able to really sink his teeth into something. And I feel like as time is progressing, we're eventually going to get into that point. Like I said, this is his very first pay-per-view match. I feel like we're going to be able to build upon this when it comes to Collision and hopefully have him appear on Dynamite a little bit more. But we are going to go into the next match. This was Darby Allin versus Brody King. Now, this was Darby Allin's stomping ground. Going into this match, I felt like it was almost a guarantee that Darby Allin was going to win. Darby Allin has really been on a downward slide ever since that he lost his championship opportunity to John Moxley. So you needed something to be able to build him back up. This was a typical David versus Goliath type match. It was balls to the wall action from the start. We see this very interesting spot in the match where Darby is thrown into the steel steps on the outside. We see Brody King, this massive man, place these steps on top of Darby Allin and then walk on top of these steps and kind of looking like this King Kong type figure on top of Darby Allin. It was strange to see, man. A big man like that crushing Darby Allin. It was insane. We are going to go into the comment section right before I get more detail into the match. Do you like, this is from Parker Curry. Do I like Bray Wyatt? Yes, Bray Wyatt, you know, when he debuted, even before he debuted on the main roster, when he was in NXT, I was really interested in the character. I was fantasy booking, you know, once they brought in Sting in the WWE a few years ago, I thought that would have been a perfect opportunity for them to have Sting versus Bray Wyatt. You know, luckily we had that WrestleMania match between Sting and Bray Wyatt and The Undertaker that really matched up. But yes, man, and it's a tragic story the way that man passed away. You know, every time you see different social media updates on his family, you know, his wife JoJo, it's really sad. You know, the world works in mysterious ways. You know, it's unfortunate that he passed at that age, but he's a legend, and I'm glad that WWE is including The Fiend in the new 2K game. Hopefully, all the proceeds to his character or the DLC that he's downloaded into goes to his family. But yes, I do like Bray Wyatt. So we're going to continue into the Darby Allin and Brody King match. Do I like Luke Harper? Yes, I do like Luke. I do like Luke Harper, man. Mr. Brody Lee. Yes, I do like Luke Harper. I like all the Wyatts, man. All the Wyatts. Even Strowman. I like Strowman. He's from North Carolina. I'm from North Carolina. So I got love for all the members of the Wyatt family. I enjoy the Wyatt Six. Do you enjoy the Wyatt Six? Is that a group that you're into right now at this moment? I don't like Chris. I don't like Chris Benoit. Nobody should. Nobody should like Chris Benoit. Right? Nobody should like Chris Benoit. So I'm going to go back into the match, man. We see this maneuver, right? Where Darby Allin pushes Brody Lee, not Brody Lee. You got me all mixed up, buddy. You got where he pushes Brody King off of the top rope, right? And he pushes him on top of the steel steps. And he lands a coffin drop on Brody King on top of the steel steps, which you knew hurt both of them. We see the ref doing the ring count, you know, doing the 1 to 10 count to count out Brody King. Brody King runs in, slips into the ring, and we see Darby Allin hit him with a coffin drop and takes the W. 1, 2, 3. Darby Allin wins. And this was a much-needed win for Darby Allin. Darby Allin, like I said, was on this downward spiral. But now that he was able to pick up this win, well, maybe not because of the events of later on in the show, what I'm going to talk about, but finally has some positive momentum going in. The next match we have is the Young Bucks versus Private Party. And Private Party has really been on a positive momentum lately. And the positive momentum that they have been on really has happened since they've been more of a turn of a serious character. We see this hype video showing them off in New York. Obviously, that's where they're from. And we're seeing them get this pep talk from Amazing Red. We finally see Amazing Red on our AEW television screens, which was something that I never thought we would see previously. But we see it. We see him giving these pep talks on, you got to do it for New York, man. You got to do it for the city. You got to do all of that. And we are setting this match up perfectly. And we see the Young Bucks come out. And if you've noticed, if you've watched the show, you saw that every single match, Matt Jackson, his pearls have gotten bigger and bigger. And it's just getting to the point like those memes that is just like, hey, if you touch this, it's going to get bigger, bigger, and bigger. And it's just kind of distracting for me, honestly. But we get to the middle of the ring, and the match doesn't start in the typical way that it would start. It started with the Young Bucks cutting this promo on Private Party, talking about how you guys have been mid-carders. Yeah, we know you guys beat us on the second episode of Dynamite, but you guys have not really been living up to your potential. Then you see them cut them off, give them the hands, and then the Bucks are seemingly walking away from the match, heading up to the ramp. And then we see Private Party run after them. The Bucks seemingly turn around at the right time, hit them with the super kick, laying them out, calling them idiots. But Private Party builds back up the momentum, and we see this spot where Quinn is on top of the stage. And every time I see those spots, man, I get super nervous because anything could go wrong. And we see him drop down on top of his partner and on top of the Bucks, and we'll get this match started off right. We get this match started off right. And the reason why that they started off right is the bell finally rings. And the story throughout this whole match was you saw two guys who want to be taken serious, who have been treated kind of like goofballs throughout their whole run. And they're really trying to show people that we are guys who can be taken seriously. And we are guys who are legitimate threats for the title. If you've been reading up with the dirt sheets or just been hearing any type of backstage whispers, the Private Party are two individuals who, Jennifer Pepperman, who is the right-hand person to Mercedes Moné and is a prominent voice in the creative room to Tony Khan. She's really been advocating for these two guys to really get their shot. And we finally see it. This was a very back and forth match between them and the Bucks. You saw Private Party in different stages of the match look like they have the momentum behind their back. They're going toe-to-toe with the Bucks because, like it or not, the Bucks are the most accomplished tag team in AEW. They are one of the more recognizable faces on the entire roster. And over the past 10 years, they are in the conversation for best tag team. Whether that says something bad about the current situation that tag team wrestling is in, or whether that's a good thing to you, you be the judge. It's up to you. But they're in the ring with two individuals who are accomplished wrestlers, and they're going toe-to-toe with them. Towards the end, man, we see Zay really putting up his own fight. And it just wasn't enough. And the Bucks get the win. But this was more of a time where you don't want to say morally, you don't want to see moral wins, I remember Jay-Z had a line, moral victories are for minor league coaches. But this was a moral victory for Private Party, man. They were able to go toe-to-toe with the most accomplished tag team in the company, not look bad. And throughout the whole match, you see the crowd really supporting them. And even after the match, we see Zay, crying. We see the crowd really bigging them up. So I feel like this was one of those nights where a star was born. It was very reminiscent to the tag team match between Swerve Strickland and Keith Lee against the Acclaimed, where the whole crowd was behind the Acclaimed, but Swerve and Keith Lee won. And you saw after that, almost immediately, the Acclaimed win the championship. So I feel like these two guys are the heir apparent to the tag team championship, but it's only going to take time with these guys. And I'm glad that they were able to really showcase their ability on a big time stage against the Bucks. And we don't really give the Bucks enough credit, man. I know they get a lot of hate, but the Bucks have, and when I say this name, these two names, they're probably going to just shit on me. They're like, why would you even compare these guys to these two greats? But they have the same ability when it comes to tag team matches that Ric Flair and Shawn Michaels have, where you could put them in the middle of the ring with a broomstick and they will have a quality match. I really do feel like the Young Bucks have that same ability, and they've shown it off many times. Think about the match against Sting and Darby at Revolution, man. That's a 62-year-old man that was probably the best in-ring match that he's had since his TNA days. And he got it out of the Bucks. So we got to give them some type of credit. But we're going to move on. We're going to move on to Chris Jericho versus Mark Briscoe. And I'm trying to go as quickly past this match as I can. Not because it was just this horrible atrocity of a match, but it's just like Chris Jericho really doesn't bring any value to the screen, in my opinion, at this point in his career as a full-time wrestler. If Chris Jericho kind of had a schedule like Brock Lesnar has or Roman Reigns has, where it's like we see them seldomly, and when they're brought back for something important. I feel like my opinion and a lot of the internet community's opinion would be a lot different on the guy, but it's just at a point where I don't know what you do with the guy anymore. He's wrestled almost every single person on the roster. He's done everything there is to do in the wrestling world and in AEW. So it's just like, what is the point of having him on the show weekly? But the whole story throughout this match and leading up to it was Chris Jericho mentioning his brother, Jay. And when I say his, I'm talking about Mark Briscoe. As we all know, Jay Briscoe tragically passed, recently. And it was a sad situation. But this was a match where if I had to put a star rating on it, man, I'd probably give it about a 3. And mainly just off of the fact that Mark Briscoe is one of the more likable guys on the roster. And you saw him and Chris Jericho go back and forth and just two vets in the ring doing their thing. And at the end, we see Mark Briscoe retain his title. And we see him retain his title because Jericho wanted to get cute and cocky and hit the J Driver, the J Driller, on Mark Briscoe. Mark Briscoe kicks out, and he hits it on Jericho for the 1-2-3 count and keeps his championship. I really don't see what another Ring of Honor championship run on Chris Jericho would have done. So I feel like this is the perfect decision. I know a lot of people, they like to sit there and there's 3 individuals who have been Ring of Honor, WWE, and AEW champions. And it was Danielson, CM Punk, and Chris Jericho. And I see a lot of people, they like to just forget the fact that Jericho is in that company. But he is, right? Technically, he is. So we're going to go into the main event. And this was the most high-stake match on the card. We saw Danielson versus Mox. This was a very emotional match just based on the fact that this was in Bryan Danielson's hometown. This was in, not hometown, home state, because he's not from Tacoma, he's from Aberdeen. We've seen this high-leverage feud between him and Moxley. We saw Moxley kick Bryan Danielson out the BCC, and we saw him put the plastic bag over Bryan Danielson, choking him out. Very brutal and very disturbing, lasting images that we got from that segment that a lot of people didn't enjoy. A lot of people didn't enjoy. I personally thought it was cool because it's wrestling. It's supposed to be violent, right? So this match starts out hot. Mox comes out first. He comes out with Maria Shafir. And we have Danielson come out to final countdown. And before the bell even rings, we see these two guys going at it outside of the ring. We see Bryan Danielson kicking the shit out of Jon Moxley throughout the segment that begins to start the match. We see him in the chair hitting him with his signature kicks. Remind you, all of this is going on while Final Countdown is playing. So it reminded me of New Jack in ECW, where he would be beating somebody up and you're having his music playing throughout the match. And it's just a cool visual to see Bryan Danielson doing this work, doing his thing in front of the local audience. So we get to this point where they're still brawling outside of the ring. And we see Jon Moxley be able to overcome Bryan Danielson. And he goes under the ring and he gets some wires and he wraps it around Bryan Danielson's throat. He's choking him out. Bryan Danielson is eventually able to break free of this, and he starts choking out Moxley with those same wires. Then we see Maria Shafir jump on his back like a spider monkey. I'm going to jump on your back like a spider monkey. You guys ever see Talladega Nights? She does that, and we see Bryan Danielson flip her off of him, and they finally get into the ring. And we had the bell ring, and you see Bryan Danielson hit Moxley with a flying knee. Does nothing. They keep brawling at it, and throughout this match, you see different points where Maria Shafir is interfering, anytime Moxley would be able to get the ref's attention, he would be getting kneed in the face by Maria Shafir. And this was a very emotional match. Just thinking about it, these are two guys who, whether you like Moxley or not, or if you think he's the weakest member of the Shield, Mox really has, in my opinion, become sort of a modern day Terry Funk. And the reason why I say that is because he's a guy who really likes to get down and dirty and grimy in the ring, and he really gets down and dirty into the ring, and we are